We're very pleased to introduce our last speaker for today, Major General Randy Church Key, Executive Director, Arctic Domain Awareness Center, University of Alaska, who will be speaking about advancing Arctic domain awareness for maritime operations. Major General Key is the Executive Director of the Arctic Domain Awareness Center at the University of Alaska and leads a team focused on science, technology, and research. While in the U.S. Air Force, his assignments included U.S. Transportation Command, Wing and Air Ops Center, and U.S. European Command. General Key is a Global Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center Polar Institute and has a pending appointment as a Commissioner to the U.S. Arctic Research Commission. Please welcome Major General Key, and over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. I am Church Key, the Executive Director of the Arctic Domain Awareness Center at the University of Alaska. The Arctic Domain Awareness Center is a Department of Homeland Security of the United States Center of Excellence in Maritime Research that is hosted by the University of Alaska. I'm here coming to you from University of Alaska Anchorage, and our center is essentially a research network that comprises research nodes to conduct a series of U.S. Coast Guard focused science technology activities, as well as educational programs at the undergraduate and graduate level, and also a series of convening events that intend to collectively advance Arctic knowledge, Arctic domain awareness and understanding, and ultimately help advance the Homeland Security enterprise, which again chiefly focused on the U.S. Coast Guard's Arctic mission set. Following today's presentation, I will take some time for questions. So please use my presentation as a way to hopefully queue up your questions that I look forward to addressing at the close of my presentation. Today, I'd like to discuss a few aspects of advancing Arctic domain awareness in order to better understand and achieve Arctic security. We believe this is a hand-in-glove presentation oriented to this Maritime and Arctic Security and Safety Conference. It is a privilege for ADAC to be once again in the company of the MASS conference. And this is our third year having a chance to present. We do look forward to next year's activities to hopefully be in person, because a virtual time together is not nearly satisfying. Is coming from Anchorage to St. John's and being with the company of marine and marine-focused professionals that include, of course, Arctic-specific experts there at St. John's. So we look forward to MASS 21, where we'll be there in person. One of the things I'd like to mention as we start the conversation about advancing Arctic domain awareness and understanding oriented to advancing and protecting our national sovereign space between Canada and the United States is starting with why. It is our respectful and the respective belief that the North American Arctic is replete with vulnerabilities. A catalyst, of course, for this is the fact we have a diminishing ice environment. The Arctic is warming at twice the rate of lower latitudes in the Northern Hemisphere, and is providing, from our vantage point, a decreased ice pack and really easy opening water spaces provide an incentive for increased human activity. So in sum, as the physical environment of the Arctic changes, is affecting the physical environment changes are affecting the human terrain that is seeing an increased opportunity to access transportation routes, a series of mineral wealth, to include also aspects of petrochemicals and more, and of course marine wildlife, specifically fish proteins, as in the littoral regions of the Arctic, and then ultimately likely into the Central Arctic Basin itself. We know that the diminishing ice environment, as it increases the opportunity for people of all sorts to come north, we know that in that there is vulnerabilities in the security of both the United States and Canada. We know that indigenous peoples have been living in the Arctic region since time began. We know that their subsistence lifestyles, as the Arctic continues to change, are threatened, and as more human activity comes further north, potentially compromises the subsistence-based lifestyles that have really fueled and allowed these populations to prosper and thrive over millennia. We believe that as vulnerabilities continue to increase, these lifestyles may become threatened and ultimately may become unsustainable in the coming decades. We also know that the Arctic region is an area that has tremendous collaboration and cooperation, perhaps some of the finest collaboration in any particular region on the planet. We know that despite the policies and positions of many rational Arctic nations, there is increasing competition in between state nations, great powers in particular, and of course, even at non-state levels, such as competition between industry and businesses. We believe that despite, again, a lot of rational policies, including the methodologies such as the Arctic Council, we believe that despite these really stabilizing avenues of communication collaboration, the Arctic does risk becoming a zone of competition. We also know that while the high north as an area that has been, it is easier to get to and is easier to stay there, we also know it's extremely expensive to do that. As logistics costs and constrained national budgets in both the United States and Canada continue to complicate our ability to project presence and to maintain and sustain security and defense forces, we know that North American Arctic is less secure today because we just can't sustain, we have not been able to sustain large-scale presence that really are protecting our respective national sovereignty between the United States and Canada. We also know that Canada and the United States are perhaps one of the closest binational relationships of any two nations on this planet. We know that in the North American Arctic, which is primarily comprised of the United States and Canada, but also, of course, includes Greenland, we know that at least between the United States and Canada, it's our respective national interest to share information, share capabilities in science, technology development, and more, and to complement the existing binational relationship to more comprehensive secure the North American Arctic. We know that we have tremendous binational relations when it comes to mechanisms of security and defense. Highlighted that, of course, is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. We also know that NORAD is complemented by a tri-command framework that includes, of course, Canadian Joint Operations Command and United States Northern Command. These three military commands provide the bulwark of binational collaboration when it comes to security and defense. We also know, of course, that the U.S. Coast Guard and the Canadian Coast Guard share in that overall complementary aspect, and that the United States and Canada's respective Coast Guards participate in the Arctic Coast Guard Forum. Again, a multinational aspect that complements the binational relationship to better secure the Pan-Arctic region and also provide safety in this from things such as search and rescue and humanitarian assistance. At the core of this, though, that we know that Canada and the United States is in our respective national interest to share information, share capabilities, and have mutual self-interest, mutual interest in in each nation providing safety and security to help secure the North American Arctic, hopefully comprehensively. Again, as I mentioned, that the security catalyst of this is diminishing the ice environment. It is a new ocean. We know that as a result of a new ocean that is less ice covered, at least seasonally. We know that right now, of course, just based on the calendar, the ice pack is advancing and is now pretty much covered the entire Arctic basin. But again, that's a seasonal activity. As summer comes again in 2021, we know that the ice pack will continue to diminish and continue to offer increasing access to areas that previously been ice covered. And when we look at this right now, nations, corporations, other activities are continuing to push north. We know that as these aspects continue to do so, protecting and defending the sovereign interests of respective nations, to include, of course, border managed border security, preservation of our own respective national resources, and realizing that that where people go, legitimate activities come north. Coming with legitimate activities, of course, are illicit activities. Curbing crime and protecting people are real needs for both the United States and Canada. We know that in some, that a rapidly warming Arctic, which is, most folks will agree that is actually happening right now, it's not a matter of much debate, if any at all, is increasing in the ability for more people to come north and do things. We know that as more people come north and do things, both states, organizations, businesses, and more, are going to drive higher defense, security, law enforcement, environmental protection, and safety needs. This, to counter this, these increased activities in order to preserve, protect, and defend our respective national spaces requires the United States and Canada continue to advance our trusted relationship. One thing that we try to do at the Arctic Domain Awareness Center is providing a bit of work in science, technology, research development, educational programs, convening activities that supports the U.S. Coast Guard research needs in the Arctic region. But of course, it's more than just the Coast Guard. It is also including the military aspects of the United States, and is also support which include the Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, in addition to Coast Guard. While our principal focus remains on the Coast Guard, we want to be open to help support others as well, other services as well. We also know that the relationship between Canada and the United States is critical for North American Arctic, and we as a center strive mightily to advance our collaboration with Canadian entities to so complement such a mission. So we advance science technology that really is focused on these specific areas: geophysical environmental modeling, which includes, of course, characterizing Arctic Ocean sea ice, quite a bit of work in marine robotics, quite a bit of work in things that support decision-making in U.S. Coast Guard command centers, and include, of course, decision support science. In order to support pollution response and disaster response for the U.S. Coast Guard, and also the community of agencies that support the Coast Guard environmental response, we do a lot of fundamental and some applied work in biological and marine environmental sciences to include analysis of pollution response to the food web. We also know that communication in the Arctic region is a challenge. So those things that enable communication, such as satellites, and being able to access coming technology satellites, just as CubeSats and other small, low-cost, high-payoff activities, we try to advance science and experiments in that way. The Arctic, of course, is warming at a tremendous rate, as we've spoken, and as a result, you're seeing degradation and essentially in frozen soil. As permafrost thaws and sometimes melts, we know the civil engineering challenges of building infrastructure continue to be challenged. So those things that advance better understanding of civil engineering dynamics for infrastructure development is something for us to continue to advance as well. And of course, big data analytics. The Arctic is an area that in order to better characterize and forecast what's happening, you've got to be able to quantify and conduct using the power of artificial intelligence and other means to be able to do big data analytics. For that's some of our work has tried to help advance this. And because the Arctic is a region that does involve people, not only science, but social science activities do matter. To include, of course, asking and gaining insights from the rural Alaskan Arctic communities. So people have been there since time began, asking what they think, what do they see, and how can we best adapt essentially Coast Guard and other marine response science technologies that can be a benefit to these communities as well. So in other words, these are things we try to do operator-driven research to support the Coast Guard's Arctic mission, but we also want to be able to support U.S. federal and other maritime and other safety and security activities. And lastly, to support the public good. This includes, of course, including public good in Canada. And this allows us to describe the following customer base. Of course, the Coast Guard, but also marine industry, and of course, even folks such as indigenous hunters, and those things that helping these hunters reduce the risks they face are things that matter to us. The way we get at this is through essentially three broad avenues of work: leading Arctic-focused science, technology, and research through specific research projects, convening experts for thinking through and challenges of what keeps the commanders up at night and helping reduce their risk and operational concerns. And again, conducting education programs at both at the undergraduate and graduate level. That includes, of course, field experiences, including for that summer internships that are at Point Barrow, Alaska, the Barrow Arctic Research Center. We're introducing students at both the undergrad and graduate level to flora and fauna research as helping expand their professional workforce development. We, of course, do this to be focused on the challenges faced by the maritime operator. This, of course, are things such as understanding the developing patterns of weather, illumination, distances, sea ice, particularly what's happening at the fine scale, understanding how difficult it is to support logistics, both for the response and for those who are responding, Infrastructure, communications, bathymetry, of course, remains tremendously concerning to the operators because, again, the Arctic region remains so poorly charted. So by helping develop the operators locate where people are and be able to figure out who's doing good as opposed to who's doing bad, that, of course, is a lot of decision support science. The ability to suitably respond to disasters and identify threats and risks to our interests. Again, this is definitely a CAN-US application to this. So accordingly, we look for science technology solutions, knowledge products, because not everything requires a widget, convening experts to help think through these problems, and really councils of experts do matter to be able to listen and learn from, and then to educate. A lot of the problems we face, of course, are looking through how to integrate different research endeavors, because many researchers themselves tend to live in silos, just simply based on their organizational construct. We're trying to cross-integrate between these silos. So we're looking at what traffic of the ships are going, where they're going, and taking a look at that compared to where sea ice is located, and looking to that where bathymetric knowns and unknowns reside. We're trying to figure out how best to inform operations specifically to improve safety and reduce risk. And of course, this drives us towards operator-driven science technology, where again is focused on modeling the physical characteristics of the Arctic region for operators, looking at decision support tools, oil spill studies, and understanding how Arctic oil spills differ from the areas of other regions, such as the Gulf of Mexico. We know that things such as induced polarization, new technologies that have been applied to pollution response in other locations, have yet to be tested on the Arctic region. Big data is a big deal. And for us, realizing that there is access to authoritative data is one challenge, but once you have access, how can you leverage the power of artificial intelligence to derive better understanding insights from quantifying large scales of data? We know that disaster response is something that is a challenge of both the United States and Canada and the Arctic region. So how to do so in such a way as to better identify the risk and really reduce the challenge and the timeline to respond. Long-range autonomous platforms are a big deal. We know that in the ice-covered regions of the Arctic, that at least seasonally, operate under the ice is really important, and communicate from under the ice to the surface and then to command and control shore sides is something that would really help many operators' decisions, and we've worked extensively in this area. We also know that geospatially oriented data aggregation matters. Fusion of information is really an ideal, but until you get a fusion, can you find a way to suitably aggregate? And again, can you leverage the powers of developing satellites that are coming into a polar orbiting construct, and to include, of course, leveraging the power of the commercial sector. We also know that sensors matter. We know the chemical isotope detection is one smart way to look at how you can detect problems at distance. Figuring out ways for using cameras and other technologies as a way to sense the environment. And then, of course, training mariners in safety practices to also comply with the International Maritime Organization's Polar Code is one other aspect to consider, and something we've worked hard to accomplish. So these are just a snapshot, and in the interest of time, will not go through any particular research project here, but I share that these are all things that were currently underway that are either directly related to Coast Guard headquarters or Coast Guard operational concerns that are all, each of these projects, of course, are led by Project Champion, the headquarters U.S. Coast Guard. This includes an ice condition index for the Arctic region, ice condition index in the Great Lakes region, long-range autonomous on-water vehicle platform, Arctic summer intern programs, an Arctic geospatial information systems application to command and control, geofencing for headquarters Coast Guard, and also general mariner traffic activities, pollution response and how oil impacts the food web, to include Arctic copepods, which are essentially a fundamental aspect in the food web. Also looking higher in the food web for Arctic mussels and seeing how spill response happens in affecting that particular community within the food web. Arctic maritime spill modeling, looking for next generation spill activities, rain-induced polarization, and an Arctic ice condition index that would help support better decision in go, no-go decision for vessel masters in the high latitudes, particularly for a transpolar aspect in the future. We're in the final stages of 2 new projects, an unmanned area system for remote monitoring for areas that's just very difficult for regulators to get out to, and also a polar and more likely becoming an Arctic communications and connectivity assessment that's focused on general mariner needs in the Arctic region. We have quite a bit of previous work that's been accomplished. I will not dwell on these particular aspects, but I'm more than happy for any discussions that any questions may drive us towards regarding completed research that we've done as a center. We know that in order to generate new research, we've got to be able to take a look at how to think through the problems that are concerning commanders. We want to do, in order to do what's operator-driven research, we bring smart people together to first of all focus on the problem sets that have been identified by the commander, U.S. Coast Guard District 17, essentially the Arctic Coast Guard's senior operator for the United States. And we also recognize that it's just not the Coast Guard, but multiple communities of interest have complementary concerns. Can we get these people all together and under one roof in order to assess the problem, identify shortfalls and gaps in science and technology, in order to develop rational research questions, then sponsor onward investigations. We've done 4 of these sort of specific workshops to really orient over 3 different research years, and have conducted quite a bit of research to advance this, again, assessing what are the problems, whether it's a cruise ship disaster, a large-scale maritime oil spill in the Arctic region, and then, of course, assessing the impacts of a large weather-related disaster response in the Arctic region for coastal communities. We've also looked at, of course, not only this aspect for science technology, but also looking for policy concerns and looking, if you will, if you focus on more of the short term for specific science technology, you're also looking for longer term views for policy concerns. So we do, in addition to an Arctic IONS, Incident of National Significance, we do an Arctic medium long-term environment set of workshops that, again, assess out what are the needs in policy and other associated drivers for planning to help, if you will, aspects of shared governance. And this, of course, each workshop that we do is oriented to a CAN-US approach. We just concluded a advancing collaboration between the United States and Canada workshop with the North American and Arctic Defense and Security Network on the 17th, 18th of September. NADSN, our good friends at Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, just focused there, again, looking to Arctic security specifically. We're looking forward to essentially 2 follow-up workshops of that in February and May this coming year as just one example. But of all the centers within DHS today, and we're one of 10, we're the one that is zeroed in on the need for CAN-US collaboration. It's in our respective national interests, and for our vantage points, in our respective interests as center to advance collaboration between CAN and US when it comes to reducing risk for the Arctic region. We, of course, in addition to hosting workshops focused on research and policy, we also support convening activities, getting smart people together to advance needs for the Alaska Command, a part of the United States Northern Command. And we have a 5-year activity now underway where our senior leader summits, our Arctic symposiums are things that we'll be sponsoring, conducting on behalf of our sponsors at Alaska Command. We're also part of the International Cooperative Engagement Program for Polar Research, part of the Office of Naval Research, and we actually lead the U.S. Situation Awareness Working Group in this aspect. And of course, as a center that's focused on pollution response as one aspect of our research agenda, we work closely with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. As I mentioned earlier, we work very hard to take care of thinking through not only hardware, software, firmware. We're also concerned about peopleware. Growing our replacements through a comprehensive educational program that really is research assistantships and workforce development at both the undergrad and graduate levels. In this aspect, we're thrilled to be able to support educational activities and actually have students not only working on center activities, but also in specific research projects. And some of this will spawn off on some of the research they'll do individually or do as part of an overall research team. We tailor these activities to the individual research needs of the projects as well as the individual educational needs of the student. And so this is something we're thrilled to be a part of, and it's a core mission to our activities. And then for those folks interested in knowing what we do on a quarterly basis, we offer a customers and partners roundtables, and these are virtual events that we had quite a few folks from Canada participate in these over the years, to include friends at the National Research Council of Canada. Occasionally we have folks at Joint Task Force North, and some of the educational entities such as Memorial University at St. John's, Newfoundland, good friends there that we've collaborated with over the past. And again, our good friends also at Training University, and then other universities across the great nation of Canada. Our bottom line is that we want you to know that even on a quarterly basis, we're open to conversation, listening, learning from our Canadian colleagues. So as we look to the future, we really want to try to advance operator-driven science technology research. We know at the end of the day, reducing risk, improving safety, and increasing awareness and increasing the precision of decisions are critical to better cope with an area that has considerable risk. We want to be able to focus on the shortfalls. We want to leverage prior investments, obviously, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If just modification of the wheel would be more suitable. We want to be cost effective. And in this regards, that we're proud as a center to relate to DHS and others. As a research enterprise, or the last almost 5 years now, we've been operating at roughly about 7 cents of every dollar goes overhead, 93 cents of every dollar goes to content of our research agenda. And that's a record we're quite proud of. We also, of course, want to, at the end of the day, field capability. And this includes hardware, software, firmware, knowledge products, and more. We do believe in our mission, and we sincerely strive to achieve this in a way that is useful for the operators, whether they're in the U.S. Coast Guard or other maritime communities. That concludes my presentation. I am hoping that this has engendered some questions. I look forward to taking them at this time.
And thank you, Church, for that great presentation coming to us all the way from Alaska today. I'm going to now pass it over to Cara Lee, and we really appreciate you joining us for a Q&A this afternoon.
Great. Thanks, Jody. We have a poll up next, people, so get ready. It's going to pop up on your screen pretty quickly. Question 1, how important is achieving maritime domain awareness to your organization? A, extremely important, B, important, or C, not important? Let's take a few minutes, folks, and weigh in on this particular question, and then we'll wait and discuss this with our presenter. Okay, seeing a lot of extremely importance.
Yeah, they're coming in pretty fast.
Yep. Kind of faster than the U.S. election, I guess.
Okay, that's good.
And Fish to say no comment to that.
Probably, yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to end the poll.
Okay, that's it. So there we have it. Surprised about this, Major General?
To be honest with you, I'm grateful for that. That means, frankly, number one, that advancing domain awareness remains for us a goal, not a milestone achieved. The reality is domain awareness, I personally look at it as an understanding, as you know, that hand in glove with awareness comes understanding, but you can't have understanding unless you have awareness. So awareness is the first step, seeking to really gain the understanding. I would look at this from kind of a vantage point of 3 dimensions. Number one, on specific aspects within functional communities. So advancing domain awareness by understanding, for example, characteristics of developing sea ice conditions, how much multi-year ice, et cetera, is in a specific category. Then I'm also looking at it from a regional standpoint, and then of course Pan-Arctic. So domain awareness really has those 3 aspects, and I really also want to know from the seabed to the surface, and the surface somewhere sort of the stratosphere, that columnar view as again part of a functional alignment. So I'm not surprised. I'm actually encouraged, but I also know that there's more of us that need to be working in this area, because frankly, there is a lot to gain in an area that really does have lacking data and lacking sensing. So achieving this is going to remain a work in progress effort.
Great. Thanks so much. So now our next poll, I'm not quite sure how this is going to pop up because it's 2 parts. Actually, I'm seeing, okay, great. So part 2, Does your organization invest in advancing research in science and technology to advance maritime domain awareness? A, yes, no, B, no, or C, you're unsure if your organization does. And then we have the second part. If so, has such investment yielded results that are operationally useful? Yes or no? Just a few more still coming in. I see them. So we'll just wait a few seconds.
And I'll take the time to remind people to fill out the survey on the in the lobby.
Are we pretty much finished up? That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, back to you, sir.
Well, so from my vantage point, thank you for that. I'm interested for those that are actually to connect with those that are investing in advancing research. Part of our aspect, as we hope, is the most CAN-US oriented research enterprises that's headquartered at a university in Alaska, or really headquartered university across the United States. It's important for us to be able to connect and collaborate with. Sharing information and a way to cross-pollinate ideas is really important. So I'm encouraged by the number that say that your organizations invest in advancing the science and technology. I'd be more than happy to connect with those folks that are investing in this area, simply to compare ideas and compare approaches, and then if there's a way we can collaborate even better. I'm also encouraged that the people are polling say that they've actually achieved operationally relevant insights and outcomes. So what we're trying to avoid, frankly, is there's only so much research dollars to go around. We want to make every dollar count, and we don't want to be conducting research that becomes shelfware. We really want research that's going to be applicable and that the operators themselves can get their hands on and apply them. And so I'm encouraged by both 1 and 2's answers, and I'd be more than happy to connect as the mass community can help me connect with these folks that are interested in collaborating this from a CAN-US vantage point.
Very much. So now we have time for some questions. I'm going to go to the first question I see in the chat. There is a new position identified in the U.S. administration for leading the Arctic in the Department of State in the U.S. What do you think the priorities should be for the new position? What are some of the policy proposals that can help support mutual security with Arctic countries?
That's a great question, and let me thank the presenter of that question. Number one, Mr. DeHart has just taken over essentially that Arctic synchronizer, if you will, for Department of State. And that his first role, of course, is really to represent the United States in Arctic Fora, to include, of course, the Arctic Council. And this, of course, is a restoring of a position that previously was held by Admiral retired Bob Papp, the former Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, who held that position essentially while the United States served as the chair of the Arctic Council. So Mr. DeHart's first order of business, if you will, is really to engage U.S. activities at the federal and really other levels of government to organize those and presenting and synchronizing efforts with the United States to the Arctic Council. But the other aspect of this is that it's not only the Arctic Council, but representing essentially the United States in both binational and multinational events, to include, of course, the Arctic Council in a way that represents American leadership, stewardship, and hopefully friendship, frankly, in the cross Arctic Fora, again, focused on those things that are advancing science, technology, policy, safety, and security are all parts of this equation. And we know that, of course, the Arctic Council does not have security mandates. So for this aspect, Mr. DeHart will have focus in those areas of advanced Arctic science and collaboration, economic development, et cetera, within the Arctic Council, but then looking at the security forums and having Mr. Hart help provide a leading role for that. For those folks who, at the beginning, I had the privilege of being recently being notified of the President's intent to appointment to the U.S. Arctic Research Commission to serve as a commissioner there, along with the rest of the communities under the chairmanship of Mr. John Harrison. John Harrison, of course, has just come from the services to his State Department himself. So for our vantage point, I think Mr. DeHart in his role is really trying to lead the Arctic initiatives, if you will, the United States federal government in ways that advance better understanding, better collaboration. And then what we hope is in showing, if you will, demonstrating this, showing and demonstrating the U.S. resolve that as an Arctic nation, that we have specific Arctic interests. We're concerned about, as a nation, to advance our security. We have national interests that really are fairly well aligned, I think, with the Canadian national interests in the Arctic, and that's preserving a shared border space and the approaches to the North American Arctic, to ensure that the illicit activities are countered and defeated, and then ultimately recognize that the United States as an Arctic nation is concerned about trying to maintain the peaceful opening of the Arctic, and realizing that great power competition need not become great power confrontation. And if we respond in strength, then nations will hopefully respect that responding at strength and find a way to work more collaboratively. And I do believe, frankly, the Arctic is an area is an exceptional place where collaboration is more readily achieved, has been more readily achieved over the last few decades than any other region on the planet. It'd be nice to continue that trajectory. But we can do so, frankly, first of all, from a North American can-US approach. And I do believe that Mr. DeHart has the ability to help the Canadian can-US efforts in the Permanent Joint Board of Defense, which is really obviously is principally focused on the Ministry of the Department of National Defense, Department of Defense, the U.S., Department of Homeland Security in the United States, and of course, Public Safety Canada. But Mr. DeHart can also perhaps provide an advocacy role for bolstering that activity when it comes to the Arctic region. And lastly, for me, I think that while Mr. DeHart, of course, in this position is really the lead Arctic advocate for the federal government within the administration, I think that there's also initiatives that may be useful. I know that right now in the National Defense Authorization Act of the United States, there is a proposal for a Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies. And the Ted Stevens Center is actually one that would be, if approved, would become the sixth of essentially 5 existing regional centers that are focused on advancing security studies that are really across the planet. One in Germany, one in Hawaii, then 3 in the United States in Fort McNair. Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies, sorry, easier for me to say than you to hear. Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies, too many words in that one phrase, but should be principally oriented to that as a can-US activity. Again, in the collaboration between United States Northern Command, Department of Defense writ large, Canadian Joint Operations Command, and to include, of course, Joint Task Force North at Yellowknife. So again, mechanisms that advance can-US shared perspectives and shared interests in the Arctic region, I think is a great benefit. And I would think that Mr. DeHart could help advocate for that if it is in fact authorized by the Congress and then approved by the President. So that's just one more example. It's a great question, and I'm giving you, pun intended, the proverbial tip of the iceberg, and I hope that's at least whets someone's appetite. I'm happy to follow up if people are interested in that conversation.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. And what are the largest technology gaps that impact Arctic operations, in your opinion?
Well, probably the number one right now would be communications. We know that the commercial sector is advancing communications via satellite, and that's helpful. Of course, many people are familiar with Inmarsat and using Iridium satellite technology. There is a new satellite-based constellation going up that's polar orbiting that is called GMDSSS. And this provides perhaps better communication and connectivity. But again, it's be able to communicate is the biggest, and having connectivity and communications ability in the Arctic region, I think, is the number one shortfall. There's also perhaps, and that affects operators. In fact, I know that, as an example, last year in the fall of 2019, the Coast Guard cutter Healy was essentially very communications limited. In fact, communications out for several weeks at a time in the north of North Slope, Alaska, in the Central Arctic Basin. And that in the modern era, being comms out of a major service platform, to me, is kind of unacceptable. We need to be able to communicate, and we need to be connected. And the ability to achieve polar, specifically ARCTIC communications, it still remains a work in progress. There's some promising developments, to be sure, but they're yet to be fielded in numbers. And ultimately, if we can't communicate, we can't really respond, and we can't certainly, operator communities can't really coordinate any sort of response if they can't communicate.
Great, so much. That's it for time. We're out of time, so I'm going to turn things back to Jody now.
Thanks again, Church, and enjoy the rest of your day.